I almost didn't hear it. My brother's barbecue was supposed to start at 3. I arrived 20 minutes early, carrying a tray of food in one hand and a small gift for his new house in the other. The backyard gate was slightly open. As I stepped closer, I heard my name. I stopped. He's only coming to brag about his new job, my brother said. A few people laughed. Then my father spoke. It would be nice if there was an accident and he never showed up. More laughter followed, not shocked laughter, comfortable laughter, the kind people share when they think everyone agrees. For a second, I stood completely still. Part of me wanted to walk in and force them to explain themselves. Another part of me knew explanations wouldn't change what I had already heard. I quietly turned around, returned to my car, and drove away. No messages, no confrontation, nothing. The strange thing was that I wasn't angry at first. I was tired. The promotion everyone thought I loved talking about had come after years of 70-hour work weeks. The house I had recently purchased came after years of renting tiny apartments. The success they mocked was mostly the result of sacrifices they never bothered asking about. As I drove aimlessly through town, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. A hospital employee introduced herself and asked if I was related to a woman named Sandra, my former high school teacher. I hadn't spoken to her in years, but she had listed me as an emergency contact. That surprised me until I remembered something. A year earlier, we had run into each other by chance. Her husband had died, her children lived overseas, and she had mentioned not having many people nearby. We exchanged numbers. Apparently, she had never removed my name. The hospital explained that she had collapsed and been brought into the emergency room. She was conscious but frightened and asking for me. I turned my car around immediately. While driving there, I silenced my phone. I didn't notice the dozens of calls beginning to arrive. The misunderstanding started about 15 minutes after I left the barbecue. According to my cousin, someone looked out the window and saw my car was gone. Then my brother checked his phone and noticed several missed calls from an unknown hospital number. The hospital had attempted to reach multiple emergency contacts before finally connecting with me. Someone jumped to a conclusion, then someone else repeated it. Within minutes, the backyard conversation transformed into panic. My father reportedly went pale. The same people who had laughed about me not showing up suddenly believed I might be lying in an emergency room. Fear has a way of stripping humor from old jokes. By the time I arrived at the hospital, my phone contained nearly 30 missed calls. I ignored them, not out of revenge. I simply had something more important to do. Sandra was sitting upright when I entered her room. Relief appeared on her face immediately. She spent the next hour talking, mostly because she was scared to be alone. I listened. A nurse eventually entered with paperwork requiring authorization for several procedures and temporary care arrangements. Sandra had no close relatives available. I helped coordinate what I could. It was ordinary, nothing heroic, just showing up for someone. Late that evening, a hospital administrator entered the room. "We have family members here asking for you," she said. I knew instantly who they were. Apparently, after failing to reach me, they had called local hospitals and eventually traced the situation to this one. The administrator looked confused. "They seem to believe you've been admitted." I almost laughed, almost. A few minutes later, I walked into the waiting area. The expressions on their faces changed immediately. Relief, confusion, embarrassment. My brother stood first. "You're okay?" "Yes." Nobody spoke for several seconds. The silence felt heavier than any argument. Finally, my father asked what had happened. I explained. "A former teacher, an emergency contact, a medical incident, nothing more." The administrator confirmed everything. That was the moment control shifted, not because anyone was humiliated, not because anyone was punished, because an authority figure had removed speculation from the room. Facts replaced assumptions. There was nowhere left to hide behind misunderstandings. My father avoided eye contact. My brother looked exhausted. For the first time in years, nobody treated me like the family member who exaggerated achievements or sought attention. The reality sitting in front of them didn't match the version they had created. Eventually, my father cleared his throat. "We were worried." I nodded. "I know." I could have mentioned what I heard. I could have repeated every word. Instead, I simply looked at him. Sometimes people know exactly which conversation you're thinking about. His expression told me he remembered every sentence. The drive home later that night was quiet, my phone filled with messages over the following days, some apologetic, some defensive, some pretending nothing unusual had happened. I answered only a few, not because I wanted distance forever, because I needed time to decide what those relationships actually meant. The hardest part wasn't hearing the joke, it was realizing how easily everyone joined in. The barbecue eventually became another family story, the hospital confusion, the panic, the misunderstanding. Most people remembered it that way. I remembered something different. I remembered standing outside a gate, listening to people I loved speak freely when they thought I wasn't there. Oddly enough, that memory helped me more than it hurt. For years, I had measured myself against their approval. After that day, I stopped. Nothing dramatic changed. No grand confrontation happened. No family collapse followed. But something inside me settled. I no longer needed to prove that my successes mattered. I no longer needed to convince anyone I was worthy of respect. And once I stopped asking for it, I noticed something unexpected. The people who had once dismissed me started treating me differently, not because I demanded it, because they finally understood that I could walk away from the role they had assigned me. Whether our relationships fully recovered, I still don't know. Some wounds heal slowly, some remain unfinished, but the smiles became more careful after that day, and for the first time, they felt honest.